Welcome back to the Realm Podcast. I am your host, Robert Williams, and today I am joined by Paul. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Paul.
Hi, I'm Paul Terigny. I've been in the cybersecurity business probably for the last 15 years. I was with Symantec for a number of years, and my last job was with Sophos, which was lasted up until about 2021, excuse me, 2021. So I've been working in the IT probably since 1976, 77. So I'm an old timer.
A few
But
years.
more importantly, the last 10 years, 12 years of my career really just focused on helping customers understand cybersecurity, the threats are out there, and how to position and protect themselves through a variety of different means, software, hardware, things like that.
Yeah, and I mean, and I imagine being involved with technology because as a millennial, I just think of how much video games have changed over the last like 50 years, from Pong to like Fortnite. That's worlds apart. And I feel like the tech cyber industry is something very similar, where the technology has just kept advancing really, really fast. And some companies, the big companies today, are companies that didn't even exist 20 years ago. And the ones that existed 20 years ago are completely shifting their focus and their goals and what they are, or what their like objectives are. It's no longer just enough to be an antivirus engine. You need to be, what is it called now, the endpoint detection and response, to be proactive instead of reactive. So anyway, but anyways, on that, I'd kind of like to get your thoughts as to some of the challenges that you've seen throughout the years, through different lenses of what do you think is something that's difficult to overcome in the cyber world?
Okay. Yeah, if we turn the clock back, you're talking about video games, Robert, and how much that has changed. But if you turn the clock back just even 10 years, and the way the cyber market has changed, it's been exponentially changing, every year since the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first started, one of the things that customers, and this was a challenge, customers viewed, antivirus or cyber protection. It wasn't even called cyber protection; it was just called antivirus, as this, well, I don't really need it. It's not important for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to get hacked. There's no hacking out there. Why do I spend it? It's basically just throwing money away when I can, I'm protected by my hardware or things like that. So that was the initial step in the process, was convincing customers that there were threats out there. And the best defense was, defending yourself and protecting yourself, protecting your assets, especially the data at the time, because cloud data didn't exist. So all their data was on prem, which at the time was not the main focus of bad guys at that time. Remember the time when bad guys first started getting into the United States and hacking, it was, the blue screen of death, or, you'd get something on your laptop that said you had to pay $50 in PayPal, or they were going to encrypt your laptop. So that was the biggest threat back when I first started positioning. No, at that time was with Symantec. So customers did not value protection of their assets at that time.
So what do you think is different between then and now? I know one of the big things in the last 10 years has been, a lot of things have shifted to cloud base, whether it's online databases or online backups or online powered antivirus engines. Um, what's something that's changed significantly that people should be
Uh,
aware of?
Well, if we look back and we turn the clock back, it was still back around the 2014 or whatever.
Hmm.
Customers used to deploy something called best of breed protection or best of breed security,
Hmm.
meaning that they would go out there and they would source, in their minds, they would source the best antivirus, the best email appliance, the best multi-factor authentication, the best firewall, the best encryption. They would do all these best of breed things, and I liken it to like a layer cake. If you have a layer cake, a chocolate vanilla layer cake with multiple layers, you usually have a jelly filling or a cream filling in between.
Hmm.
Well, and that's exactly what happens when you have all these different protocols in place. You might have 6 or 7 different layers of security in your environment, but the gray area is where the bad bad guys would operate because none of those layers talk to each other. The firewall never talked to the endpoint. The encryption never talked to multi-factor authentication. There was no central control for the customer. So the customer was basically trying to weave all this together at their, within their own, world. And as the threats progressed and became more sophisticated and bigger in scope, then these IT managers were overwhelmed with trying to understand where these attacks were coming from. And when an attack occurred, guess what happens? They'd be finger pointing. Oh, it was the firewall that let this
Always.
guy in. Oh, it was the endpoint that did it. Or it was somebody else. So the customer was always stuck at this juncture of, how's he going to protect himself? And that's where the advent of a lot of cybersecurity companies, they all started to develop this. Let's integrate as much of our technologies together into a single platform where a customer can see everything that happens of all the different products we have. So that was a big, big change for giving the customer one view of their environment that would have encryption, that would have multi-factor authentication, servers, endpoint, ransomware protection. And you look at all the big cybersecurity vendors in the marketplace today. You take SentinelOne, Carbon Black, even Sophos was the leader of doing this, but they all Bitdefender, another one, but they all
Hmm.
have this integrated package where the customer can look at, see what's going on in his environment. And that was a big step. And now we fast forward to, let's say, today. The biggest issue now for these customers is that even with all this great technology and the advent of XDR, where all these vendors are sharing all this data amongst themselves and all this great stuff back to SOCs and SIM tools and everything,
Hmm.
the problem is the customer still can't keep up with it. So what they've done is a lot of these cybersecurity companies now offer a service, a managed service that will actually manage the customer's security environment in total. And they basically offload the customer from doing this work because now they have the expertise. The MSP or the managed provider has this really deep bench of people that they have on their staff that can interpret, react, remediate for the customer and not have the customer do it themselves. And like I think one of the other things is people would say, well, why doesn't the customer just hire these experts to be on his staff? One, they're like hen's teeth. They're very hard to get, and when you do get them, they're very expensive. So by having a managed partner, leveraging them and their size and their experience, the customer could feel a lot more secure. So we're seeing more and more customers moving to this managed service environment,
Hmm.
for a variety of reasons. One is having a better established security platform.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a really good point because I know when I first started talking to a lot of different vendors to scope out products back when I worked at MSPs, the big thing they always sold was single pane of glass, single pane of glass, single pane of glass, single pane of glass. And when I was getting out, like I've always had a single pane of glass, and I started about 10 years ago when that started becoming the big thing. And now everybody's like, "Oh, it's a single pane of glass," and I'm like, "Oh, that's neat. Isn't that normal?" No, it's not. It's not normal, and like you mentioned, you wind the clock back a little while. And even still, some systems today, the firewall is a separate login than the switches, and the switches are a different login than your ESXi hosts. Your ESXi are different from your Windows servers, so you have all these different components. So, like, I remember the first place I worked at, and I had the data center that I could VPN into, but then there was the ESXi environment I'd have to connect to, and the switches that I would have to connect to, and there was no way to singularly manage it. Now, back then, you didn't, arguably, they didn't want you to connect these things because it would be a single point of failure. And now, I think the security mechanisms we have in place now are far better than they were 10 years ago, and it's far easier to have better security around. If your system's trying to get brute forced, it'll just lock down that account as opposed to, oh, you eventually got in, sure, here's the kings of the kingdom. But that's definitely a big component, is getting that single pane of glass now, so that way you can manage everything. I know Enable, with its End Central and End Sites, they deeply monitor your environment for all sorts of
Mm-hmm.
activities, and End Central can even pull your switches into. I don't think you can like directly manage them, but at least you can see them and see them online. So it's it's definitely the way we're going is to that single pane of glass for everything, and I think we're not very far off from the single pane of glass for your environment. Period. Like I would not. It would not surprise me if in the next 10 years Microsoft comes out with some sort of all-in-one on-site package that can monitor your Windows servers, your switches, your firewall, and just everything from one place. And it's got all these security mechanisms to make sure nobody else can hit you.
You make a good point, Robert, because the challenge is when I was with those cybersecurity companies, is that they never wanted to share their information with anybody. Everybody thought they only had the secret sauce of whatever they
Mm-hmm.
did, and they felt that, well, if we share any information to, like, say, a SIM tool, well, we're going to devalue ourselves. And I think what has happened, and you mentioned it, is that more and more of these companies, are fulfilling their obligation to move to an XDR, which is like we talked about, is sharing more information to get to that single pane of glass at some point. So, like a customer's SOC might have a single pane of glass at one time, collecting all these XDR feeds. With the help of a little bit of artificial intelligence, may be able to filter out some of the non-threatening flags that they get and be able to
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, this is really what the health of the customer looks like at this one point in time. Now that might be nirvana, that might be 20 years from now, I don't know, but realistically, when you look at it, you know, connecting all these different inputs, firewalls and endpoints and servers and switches and everything like that, the volume of information flowing back and forth would just be overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I think that's, and that's one of the things that, if you look at some of the SIM tools that have tried and failed over years, is that they're just collecting way too much information and it just became noise for everybody. And I think
Yeah.
that's what happens when you start to collect. You need that layer of somebody's going to have to come up with some level of artificial intelligence that really kind of pulls all that stuff together and then figures out what's the most important piece and then present it back to the customer or to the analyst so they can look at it and say, yeah, this is really a threat, or this could potentially be a threat. We want to prevent it.
Yeah, it's actually ironic that you mentioned AI because on the episode last week we touched on AI as well, and and this is one of the instances where AI could be put to good use. Where again, the first MSP I ever worked for was a very large environment that had I think 12 or 16 blades on a CSXI host, and they were constantly going down. One would go down, one would turn back on, another one would go down, another one would turn back on, and I was getting emails anytime a status changed on the ESXi hosts, and it eventually just got to a point where they were going to my spam folder because I just got them all the time, and I never opened them because we always had plenty of other hosts to take care of, and I technically at that point it wasn't even my job to take care of the ESXi hosts. I was just aware of what was going on, and that's kind of goes to what you were saying. It's just the noise. So if we had some at least basic intelligent programming just to be like, oh, hey, the system went down, but it was just a reboot. It's coming back online. We don't really need to alert anybody that something happened. Or you could say, hey, a reboot was initiated by this user. And then it'd be like, oh, who's that? Now we have a problem. So it's AI can be a great tool to help, especially when it comes to weeding through alerts and alarms. And I'm sure you can easily train them to keep an eye for specific alarms in different platforms. You have an EDR. You don't really want to be getting an email every single time a threat is quarantined because the threat has been quarantined. You don't.
Right.
The EDR did its job. You don't need to be alerted for that. You can log in and be like, oh, hey, somebody downloaded a bad thing, but it was taken care of and it was locked away. Great. You want to be alerted when it's like, oh, hey, you downloaded something bad. We know it's something bad, and we couldn't quarantine it. That now you should be getting alerted. So, and I feel like some of the EDRs, I can't speak to exactly which ones, but I know some of them are starting to power the back end with AI to kind of scrubble the dark webs, if you will, to keep up with the latest trends of emerging threats. Kind of gone are the days of a virus hits day one, and then it can propagate for weeks or months before we can figure out, oh, that file's actually a virus? Oh no. Like now it's like, oh hey, this virus popped up over here, and then it just hits the search engines, and now Sentinel-1 knows that's a virus, so it can take care of it, within 24 hours it's logged. So, you know, AI has its great uses. Just got to apply it right.
Well, you remember Target, the department store. They got
Yeah.
hacked. There was a very, very well-known hack that they had gotten, and just again, this is just boiling it down to its basic facts. Is that they had a very large security operations center at Target, and they had a very well orchestrated network of collecting data and all the things you just talked about. But the problem was is that they were so overwhelmed with all these different flags and warnings that are coming through, they actually missed the most important ones.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's human nature because they were relying on people sitting in front of a screen to look at everything and track things down. So they might have gotten 1,000 warnings about something that was really nothing to be concerned of, and the one that they should have been looking at didn't get caught. And again, like you said, that's where, and I know a lot of cybersecurity companies do this. The AI is basically able to filter out and basically look at it and say that's don't bother with that. Just push it to the back. Let's focus on this. This is starting to look like it's a problem, and it's going to happen. So let's watch over here versus all those other stuff. So you're absolutely right. And again, that's just you know too much information is not always a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. Sensory overload is definitely something that
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
If you check your
yeah.
inbox,
It's human nature.
I like to keep, I get lambasted a lot because I have a Gmail account, and anytime I log into it, my significant other sees I have like 1,500 unread emails because it's just my regular email I used to sign up for stuff. I'm not gonna read every email that comes in there, but my work email, if I see like more than two unread emails, I'm like, I gotta check those. That's
Yeah.
and even still, that's still most of those are just, hey, here's the newsletter. Hey, here's our advertisement. Hey, here's this. And if I had an AI that could scrabble my inbox and tell me here's the important emails, that would be helpful.
Well,
Um,
you can always color code them,
yeah, right.
It's
Like,
like,
yeah, I always like to
like
use the
that's always
flags.
a good way of doing it.
Yeah. Um, but anyways, that's kind of a decent enough segue to kind of go into here. So, obviously, you've kind of established you're well versed in the cyber world. You've been in and around it for if a little while, and you've seen plenty of challenges. But what is something that you've learned that you kind of wish um, people wouldn't have to go through themselves? Just something that you've picked up on in your years that is important that maybe you didn't think was important originally, but your mind has changed over time because like, well, maybe having an offsite backup is important or something, something along those lines.
Yeah, and this is something that kind of it's kind of another industry spin that's happening today, which I'm kind of interested in see how this takes off. But you know, and I'm talking about companies now looking at providing warranties for their product, especially in the cybersecurity or in the IT space. That was unheard of years ago. No one ever warranted anything, and it's because the products were not, let's say, fully 100% capable of doing what they're doing today. But we're seeing a lot more of these companies springing up all over the place that are telling customers that I'll warranty your environment X dollars, real dollars, if something happens to your environment while you're part of my organization, or I'm managing your organization, stuff like that. So this warranty thing has really blossomed, and it's kind of an interesting aspect of which driving customers to go to companies that offer warranties. And I think honestly, I think I know you're talking about challenges, and I'm kind of mixing them up with what's the takeaway, what's the future. I'm thinking in the sense that one is when I was first selling, customers say, well, this is not a guarantee. I says, no, we can't guarantee. You know, there's all different variations on why you could get hacked. It could be something you did. It could be a fault of something else in your system that we have no control of. So we have no ability to give you a warranty. And then from that, we sprung up a whole brand new industry, which is cyber insurance. You know, cyber
Hmm.
protection. The cyber
Yeah.
insurance blossomed over the last 10 years because
Yeah.
customers now were faced with a situation where nobody's going to warranty the product that they're buying. They're still going to get hit. They're going to have days outages. They're not going to be able to operate for days at a time. And so spending thousands of dollars for cyber insurance in the event that you get hacked, that became a normal business practice. And, you know, and as we've seen in the past, Robert, is that, you know, customers do get hacked a lot.
Hmm.
And the bad guys go after and they take their data, regardless of where it is. And sometimes they give it back, sometimes they don't. And
Hmm.
realistically, you know, I think Brian Waltermeyer came up with this statistic, and I think he did a lot of research to find it. But, you know, after a ransomware attack, customers normally, or I say typically, lose about 20% of their data, regardless of where it's held, on site or in the cloud or whatever. So
Hmm.
that's a devastating hit to a company to lose 20% of their data unrecoverable. And again, that could be because the bad guys did something before they left just to prove a point, or something happened in the meantime. But so this warranty thing is starting to pick up. And you know, if I go back to my early days of selling, it would have been really a great ability to put that warranty in front of the customer, say, buy Sophos, buy Symantec, we'll warranty this product for, you know, $1,000, 2,000, whatever the number was. And I think that's where companies are getting to today. And you know, I was just looking at one, Cork Inc., which is, you know, it's amazing what they're looking to warranty for a company. But I'm sure there's a lot of what do you call it? Hoops you have to jump through to get that warranty. You
Yeah.
gotta buy a lot, you gotta spend a lot. It's like, you might have to pay a pretty penny, but at the end of the day, you got this nice warranty sitting there. In the event that something happens, you're going to be able to recover or help get remediation based on this warranty payment.
Yeah, it's definitely something that people are looking more into these days because, a warranty for because it used to be you would have a guarantee. The product would last X amount of time. And now a warranty is not necessarily something people think about when it comes to, softwares or services, but it is something that is being used to fill in the gaps because when COVID happened and a whole bunch of people started remotely working, and some of the companies have shifted to remote only, just period. And that's increasing the attack vectors. And some cyber insurance companies are not getting people insurance anymore because either, oh, you have too many people on remote work, you have too many people connecting from the outside in, or oh, you have backups but you're only doing it on site, you're not doing off site, and you have a whole laundry list of things you have to check to get that insurance. And the warranties are showing up to fill in the gaps so that way, hey, you're getting this product, we can warranty that product and make sure it's continuing to work. All you got to do is like give us access to make sure it's set up right, and we can cover it. And I think that's really what's helping, especially some of the small medium businesses, um, to just kind of exist and have that little peace of mind because I could spend $20,000-$30,000 on a cyber insurance policy for a whole year, or maybe a couple grand on a warranty to make sure my backups are set up appropriately. So something that can
Yep.
just help, and it's the peace of mind. Smaller companies. I would argue smaller companies need it more than bigger companies because a lot of bigger companies are, I don't want to use the phrase too big to fail, but even if all their data goes away, they will just keep on chugging because they have to, and they just will. I mean, if you think of like a grocery store, Target, you mentioned Target earlier, somebody hacks into Target's HQ and steals all their data, that's not going to stop the grocery stores from operating. They're just going to keep on going. And so it's, small businesses, some pizza joint down the street doesn't have that ability. Somebody hacks into the one computer that runs the whole business and it's gone.
Hmm.
They'll need something to help quickly, and that's where I think these warranties definitely come into play, is to help those smaller companies that need relief immediately, as opposed to they'll fix it when they get to it.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. That SMB market, small medium businesses, really benefit from that warranty approach versus the cyber insurance because, like you said, you can't even afford cyber insurance in a lot of companies right now because
Hmm.
you don't meet the criteria that you pointed out. But also, when you couple that warranty with a managed services, I really think that gives the customer and again, we're talking it's more costly than doing it yourself. You're right. But at the same time, I think there's this security that the customer is going to have a better environment. He's protected because he's got people doing stuff for them already. He doesn't have to do it. And like I said, in the event of a catastrophic failure, there's that warranty money that's going to be paid versus cyber insurance, which we all know cyber insurance or insurance companies, the first thing they do is deny the claim. And then, then you got to go through, round and round to get
Yeah.
your money. And then by the time you get it, it could be 4 months, 5 months and your business is already in the toilet. So, that's where you get into quick payments, insurance claims, all this stuff. So I think the whole market is going to really look at, all the vendors are going to be offering some type of warranty on their product because it's just going to be, hey, you want to get in the game? This is what you have to ante up. You got to have a warranty on your product now. It's like if you bought a car, you buy a car, hopefully you buy a car that's got a warranty.
Yeah. I mean, I just bought a car earlier this year. It comes with a standard, whatever I think it's bumper to bumper for 3 years, but then they want you to pay a little extra for that. Uh, if you're getting it, what's the word? If you're getting it financed, they're like, hey, we'll warranty for as long as you're paying the car off. Which of course means, like if if
5 years.
if you have a 5 year loan on that, on that 1 month after is where the powertrain goes out. But
Well,
yeah.
think of it this way. If getting back to the comparing one vendor against another, is if you had two identical cars, one was with a warranty and one was out in the same price. Why would you buy the one without the warranty?
Yeah, if it's yeah.
It's a no-brainer. Yeah, you want the warranty. So, however, the cyber insurance companies or cyber vendors do it, how they bundle in the warranty, make it part of the price, hide the price, whatever. I think that's going to be part and parcel to everything they have going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that will about wrap up what we need for today's episode.
Okay,
So I'm
that
going
was
to
great.
say
I enjoyed it, Robert.
thank you. I'm going to say thank you to all of our listeners who tuned in. And once again, I'm Robert. Thank you, Paul, for being here.